Hey guys, ExoticDxn here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a couple things that have been said about me on the Discord server. As a lot of you guys know, there's been a couple things that's been said about me on the Discord server, and hopefully by the end of this video, you guys will understand everything that's been happening on the Discord server, and hopefully a lot of things will be set straight. So without further ado, I'm going to hop into what's been said on the Discord server. Before this video begins, I just want to let you guys know that some of you may have some pretty harsh opinions about me right now, and I understand why you may have those opinions about me, but I want you guys to, but I'm asking you to please put those opinions to the side and listen to everything that's going to be said in this video, as everything will be said in this video. So, the situation started back in June of 2021. This was near the end of my last year of high school. I was basically, so what happened in June of 2021 is I used to talk about having trypanophobia and how it is the worst thing to have during the pandemic. For those who have no idea what trypanophobia is a fear of needles. Ever since these messages were sent on the Discord server, a lot of people have been spreading a lot of lies about what trypanophobia is. I'm going to be talking about all the lies that's been said about trypanophobia and all those lies that's been said about me on the Discord server. So I'm going to go over all the lies right now. So the first lie that people have been saying about me and trypanophobia is basically me being an anti-vaxxer and people who have trypanophobia being anti-vaxxers. That's not true. There is a difference between trypanophobia and there's also a difference between anti-vaxxers. The differences between, trypanophobia is like what I said earlier. Trypanophobia is a fear of needles. And an anti-vaxxer is somebody who doesn't believe in vaccines. A lot of us have different opinions on what works in our sense, like what type of medical tools really work in our world, and we all have our beliefs on certain things, and we don't have to always have the same beliefs as everyone else. So, no, I am not an anti-vaxxer, and people who have trypanophobia are not anti-vaxxers. The next thing that I want to talk about is people saying that I'm not encouraging people to get the COVID-19 vaccine, and people who have trypanophobia are also not encouraging people to get the COVID-19 vaccine. That's not true. If you are somebody who wants to get the COVID-19 vaccine, then I would suggest you do it if you really want to get it. I am friends with many people who have had both their COVID-19 vaccines. So yeah, people who have trypanophobia are not disencouraging people to get the COVID-19 vaccine, and I am also not disencouraging people to get the COVID-19 vaccine. If you're somebody who really wants to get the COVID-19 vaccine, then I would suggest you get it if you really want to get it. The last lie that's been spread about me and people who have trypanophobia is people who have trypanophobia are basically saying that. So people who have trypanophobia don't believe that COVID-19 is a threat, and people are also saying that I don't believe COVID-19 is a threat. That's not true. I believe COVID-19 is a threat, and it is a danger to this world, and COVID-19 needs to be put to an end. So yeah, all the lies that's been said about me and people who have trypanophobia are not true. All the lies that's been said are not true. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the next thing that I want to talk about is why were those messages sent in the first place. So the messages were sent in the first place because I was crying out for help, and I needed assurance, and I just didn't know how to explain it in another way. And so I thought if I talked about having trypanophobia being the worst thing during a pandemic, I thought it would help. But it turns out people started to spread lies about trypanophobia, and people started to spread lies about me, and it turns out that I shouldn't have sent those messages about having trypanophobia being the worst thing to have during the pandemic. I probably should have not sent those messages on the Discord server. So the next thing that I want to talk about is how this fear got into the fear that it is today. So, in order to understand how this fear got to where it is today, we need to look back to where it all began. Ever since I was a child, I was always afraid of needles, and it was like the most scariest thing that I ever had to do in my whole entire life. And the fear really became a really big issue when when I was in grade 5 at the time. So apparently, when I was in grade 5, I was in an elementary school. My elementary school had grades K to 7. And for some people, I don't know if this is the same in all countries, but in some countries, when you're in grade 6, you have to get a grade 6 immunization shot. And I found out that grade 6 students, when my sister was having her ice cream party when she was in grade 2, it was also the same day that the grade 6 students had their immunization shots. I was in grade 5 at the time, and when I heard about the immunization shots in grade 6, I did not want to go into the next grade. I did not want to go into grade 6, so I tried my best to be smarter than everybody else in the class, so that way I could skip grade 6 entirely and move on to grade 7. And I also tried to fail grade 5 as well. Both of those attempts of trying to skip grade 6 entirely and failing grade 5 did not work at all, and I ended up being put into grade 6. And grade 6 was when my life really started to fall apart, as I already had, as in grade 6, my dad and my grandma started to have health issues, and having those happen while I was in one of the worst grades in my whole entire life, it was already pretty challenging to get through, especially when it was time for the grade 6 students. Especially when it was time for my grade 6 class and every other grade 6 class in my school to get their grade 6 immunization shots. When my grade 6 class was called down to get their immunization shots, my grade 6 teacher told the whole entire class. I just got back from lunch, and my grade 6 teacher told everybody in the grade 6 class that everybody was going to be getting one needle. When I heard about that, I decided to make an attempt to run away from school, and before I could even put my stuff on to even run away from school, as it was pretty cold, and I put my coat in my locker. I decided to, before I could even grab my coat, so that way I could stay warm while I ran away from school, a student caught me before I could even do anything. The student was across the class from my grade 6 classroom, and he asked what I was doing, and I told him that I was going to run away from school. So what really stopped me from running away on that school that day was basically, I was afraid that if I actually did run away from school, I was afraid that he was going to tell somebody on me that I actually ran away from school, and I did not want my parents to know that I ran away from school if that actually happened. And it got really bad. I just didn't know what to do at that point. And when I was in grade 6, and I found out that I was not getting my grade 6 immunization shot, but the same day that all the other grade 6 students were getting theirs, I was getting mine a couple days after theirs, and I just did not want to be part of what they were doing. I just did not want to be part of the immunization shot thingy. And when it was my day to get it, I was not happy at all. I just wanted to be out of there as soon as possible. And then a couple of months after that day, grade 6 students some of the grade 6 students had to get a booster shot. I decided to not make an attempt to run away from school that day, as to basically avoid the same thing happening again. And through that whole entire time I was in that grade 6 classroom, I was just praying and hoping that my name would not be on that list. And when one of the students walked into the classroom, she told everybody in that classroom, and when one of the grade 6 students walked into my grade 6 classroom, she told everybody in the grade 6 classroom that they would be safe from immunization shots until grade 9. And when I heard that, I just froze because I did not know what to do. I wanted to basically try and stay behind or be smarter than everybody in grade 8, so that way I can move on. So that way I could skip grade 9 entirely and move on to grade 10. I decided to fail grade 8, so that way I could not move on to grade 9. And I moved on to the next grades. I moved on to grade 7 and grade 8. Those years were miserable as I got bullied a lot. I got bullied for having ASD. I got bullied for having trypanophobia. And these bullies were other students, both younger and older students. And when I tried to like I said earlier, I tried to be smarter than everybody in grade 8, so that way I could skip grade 9 entirely and move on to grade 10. And I also tried to fail grade 8, so that way I could not move on to the next grade. Apparently, both of those attempts failed, and when that happened, I tried to make some attempts to get myself expelled from school. I tried everything that I possibly could to get myself expelled in grade 9, and every single thing that I tried to do in grade 9 did not work. All those attempts that I tried to do to get myself expelled failed, and then near the end of September and near the beginning of October, all the students were sent home with confidential letters. And these confidential letters were about grade 9 immunization shots. And this is where the whole nightmare really started to begin, as I was not looking forward to it at all. I had my grade 9 immunization shot a whole month before the other grade 9 students had theirs. While I was heading to the immunization clinic to get the grade 9 immunization shot, I restrained myself from leaving my parents' vehicle. I restrained myself as hard as I could to not go to that vehicle, to not leave the vehicle. I also tried and when that failed, I was put into the doctor's office. And I tried to find every single possible escape route that I possibly could have. I tried to find a possible escape route that my parents couldn't find me through, as they were in the office with me. And when the nurses came in, they were getting their syringes ready. I was not looking forward to it at all, and then when I just tried my best to refuse everything that was possibly coming my way, and then I just did not want to be part of it. I had so many emotions running through my head, and I just refused every single way that I could possibly have gotten my way out of it. And when that happened, 5 more medical employees who worked at that doctor's office came into the doctor's office, and those 5 people held me down and restrained me the whole entire time I had the grade 9 immunization shot. And that whole entire time they were restraining me down, I felt like nobody cared about me. I felt like nobody loved me anymore. I felt like my parents hated me. I felt like my whole world was about to collapse. I just felt so many negative emotions running through my brain, and those negative emotions never left me. They never left me. They stayed with me for a couple months, and these negative thoughts really started to impact the way of how I acted in school. Basically emotion-wise. I felt really isolated from everyone. I felt like I was different from everybody else. And I felt like if I told anybody about what happened, I felt like nobody would care, or I would just get bullied for it, like what happened last year in grade 8, and what was soon to become in grade 9 as well. As there was one student who was in my French class that year. He said that nurses were going to be coming back to give one student who had the same first and last name as me. They said that nurses were going to come back to the school to give me another shot, and he was laughing his head off the whole entire time after he said that. And I just felt scared. I was angry. I was annoyed. I was sad. And it was literally the most horrifying thing that I've ever had experienced in my life. And then in October, I had my first panic attack, and it was the most scariest thing that I've ever had experience in my life. And it was so scary. I just didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't want to tell my parents about what happened that day. And the reason why this attack happened was because I heard other grade 9 students were getting their immunization shots, and I was afraid that I was also on that list. And that whole entire time, the grade 9s had their immunization shots. I was in that panic attack the whole entire time. And that attack lasted for 2 whole classes. Each class at the time was about an hour long. So it was about 2 hours. It was about a 2-hour panic attack. And when my third class began, the class before lunch, that's the whole... And when the third class began, the one before lunch, that's when the panic attack faded away. And I thought that was just going to be it. I thought that was going to be the last time I would ever have to experience anything like that. And apparently I was wrong. As I started to have anxiety attacks more often, I started to have them mostly every single school day when I was in math class and when I was in subjects that I just did not like to be in. Math was definitely the hardest one to be in for me, and I had panic attacks in that class, and I would even have them in science class as well, as those were the classes that I was in when those panic attacks were happening. And those were very hard classes for me at the time. A couple months after the grade 9 students had their immunization shots, about a month after that, that's when I started self-harming. I used to bang my head on anything that was hard. I banged my head on walls. I used my hands to hit my forehead. The only reason why I did that was because I wanted to numb the trauma, the sadness, the anger, and the anxiety away. But it only worked in the short term. But those feelings really started to kick in mostly every single school day, and every single time I had a panic attack. That's when I did the self-harming mechanism, and it worked for a little bit, but it started to get worse as it started to become an addiction, and that's when, and in 2 weeks after I started self-harming, that's when I started planning my suicide. I felt like it was the only way out of the trauma that I was going through, all of the negative emotions that I was going through. The only thing that really stopped me was because I wanted to talk to somebody about this, and they told me not to really, and they told me that when I told them about what I was going to do to myself, they told me not to basically act on those thoughts that I was having. They told me that these thoughts would pass, and they told me to also talk to other students as well. And they said not to talk about what I was going through at the time, as I told this person, who is a really reliable person, who I'm not going to say the name of, because I'm not going to say the name of anybody in this video. If anybody's mentioned in this video, I'm not going to say their names, as I want to keep their identities protected. When I told this person about it, they told me when I was going to be talking to other people, they told me not to talk about what I told to her. So that's what I did. A couple days after I had that talk with her, I decided to talk to other students, both older and younger than me. And this was my second year of high school. So yeah, I was in grade 9 at the time, and my high school was grades 8 to 12. So when I was talking to other students, both older and younger than me, a lot of these students thought I was a pretty cool guy, and they also thought I was pretty funny. And after that conversation, and when I got home that day, I thought that other people should figure out how cool I really am and how funny I can really be. So I decided to start this YouTube channel, the one that you're watching this video on right now. And a lot of people actually did believe that I was a pretty cool guy, and a lot of these people thought I was pretty funny as well. And as my anxiety started to get worse and worse over the years, as I continued to get bullied, and both by other students and teachers, and when I was in and I was also going through even more tragic events in my life as well, as I already had more tragic events that happened before the grade 9 immunization shot, as my grandpa had a stroke when I was in grade 8. The good news is that he survived, but he would only be able to see out of one eye for the rest of his life. And when I was in grade 12, in March of 2020, that's when I was able to overcome my depression, but there was a downside to that as well, because also in March of 2020, all the schools in my province got shut down due to COVID-19. There were no cases in any of the schools in my area, but in order to I guess the district of the province decided that in order to keep everybody safe, they decided to shut all the schools down in my province, both inside my area and both outside my area. This really had an impact on me as I just started to overcome my depression, and and my anxiety started to raise. Just when it started to lower a little bit, it started to raise back up, and I was scared that I was going to catch it. I was scared that I was scared that I was going to catch it. I was scared that one of my friends was going to catch it. I was scared that any of my family members would catch it, especially since that my dad had some health issues. And I knew that if he got it, he would suffer from COVID a lot more seriously than any of us would. And during that time, it was a very dark and scary time in my life, I would say, as I heard more cases of COVID popping around, as both schools got COVID cases, businesses got COVID cases, in other parts of the world, other parts of Canada, and other parts of my province as well. And it was one of the most scariest times, as one of them was also relatively close to my area, as it was about a 30-minute drive plus one ferry trip, as it was one ferry trip and a 30-minute drive from where I lived. It was another town in my area, and it was a ferry trip and a 30-minute drive from where I lived. And that's how close that first COVID case was. And when schools started back up, I went back for an extra year, as I wanted to improve on my grades. But things really started to go downhill. The reason why I say that is because in grade 12, before COVID shut down all the schools, there was this girl in my French class, and I had a crush on her. I just knew that I had a crush on her as soon as I saw her walking through the doors of my French class. And these feelings that I had continued on after I left the French class with her. But I saw her a couple more times in my art class. And when I was and when school started back up and I went back for my extra year, she was in my art and she was also in my social justice class. Every single time I didn't see her in class, I was sad. Every single time I saw her in class, I was happy. And she was like one of the first, and she was like the only thing that I could not take off my mind. She was very beautiful, and I tried to talk to her. I was pretty shy though, especially during times of a pandemic. And I was already still worried about COVID as well. So I talked to her. So during the time I talked to her, I gave her compliments. I gave her very nice compliments, and she said thank you. I did have panic attacks, so a lot though throughout that year. I did have better coping mechanisms than I did back when I was 14, because I was 18 at the time when I realized that I had a crush on her, and I still had a crush on her. When I was 19, she was 1 year younger than me. By the way, just to let you guys know, she was 1 year younger than me. And when I left the art class and the social justice class, and I was put into a earth science class, a math class when I was put into an earth science class and a woodworking class, which I switched out of to be put into a math class, those whole entire times I was in those classes, I was sad because she was not in any of those classes with me. And I was afraid that something bad was going to happen since I was not in those classes with her, but when we were in other classrooms for the earth science part of the class, there was another classroom that normally joined in, but they didn't really do any of the assignments with us. They were in there just to do other assignments. That class that went into the same room as us one day, and a couple other days as well, was a class that she was in. And when I saw her, I decided that and when I saw her, I gave her more compliments. The room that we were in was the library. And most of the time that I was in that earth science class, I decided to ask if I could be in the library for the rest of the class. I only did this during my breaks. I did this after I finished all of my work. And every single time I saw her in the library, I gave her compliments. And then when I was done earth science and my math class, I was put into another class. I was originally going to be put into a metalwork class, but I switched out of that before that class even began, and I got put into a catch-up class where I was basically able to catch up on any work. But the other class that I had during the time that I had that catch-up block was a PE class. So basically that was an easy term for me, but I was also pretty sad during those times as well, as the same person who I mentioned earlier was also not in those classes. But I was able to still have some laughs with people during the catch-up class and the PE class, as I was very talkative with a lot of my friends as well. And one of the people who I was very talkative to was actually one of my very close friends, and who I consider one of my very close friends to this very day, as we still talk to each other a lot to this very day, even though both of us are outside of the classroom, but that's for another video. And then after that class ended, I was put into my two last classes, which was a drama class and a French class. The drama class was sad for the first week, as I'll get to in a little bit. But the second week of the drama class was a little bit of a surprise. and it was also pretty happy as well. It was a surprise for the first day. It happened. As the girl who I mentioned earlier, the one who I had a crush on, got switched into my drama class. And she was in my class, and sometimes the drama teacher would ask us to partner up with other people. I wanted to partner up with her, but most of the times she was either partnered up with another person in the class or one of her friends. Other people in the class, when they were partnered up with her, they were like random people in the class, and another person who I'll get to in a little bit. And then graduation hit, and before any of that could happen, May 1st really started to hit. And what really happened on that day was something I'll explain into more detail. What happened on May 1st was something that's been announced on the news for a relatively long amount of time, for a couple months. What's been announced on the news was basically COVID-19 vaccinations. And when I heard about this, I thought there were going to be different types of variants of the COVID-19 vaccines. I thought there was going to be an arm injectable form. I thought there was going to be a nasal spray form. I thought there was going to be a oral vaccine, and I also thought there was going to be a pill format as well. But I was wrong about and I thought all those forms were going to be coming out on the same day when they were released to the public. Unfortunately, I was wrong about all of this. Apparently, there was only going to be one variant available when this thing was available to the public. The variant that was going to be released was the one that was the one that I hated the most, which was the arm injectable form. As a lot of you guys know, as I already mentioned earlier, I had trypanophobia, and this really made the trypanophobia a lot more worse, and my anxiety started to get worse. And some of the same feelings that I felt back when I was 14 years old. I was 19 years old at the time this happened. And all those feelings that I felt when I was 14 really started to come back to me. And the memorization of the trauma that I went through when I was 14 years old as well also really started to come back to me as well. And during May, I felt an overwhelming emotion of sadness. This emotion really started to get worse and worse for the rest of my last year of high school, and this also continued to carry on after I left high school as well, and also started the college courses as well. That I'm doing as well. And during this time, I felt like I was not going to be able to get through this by myself. I decided to start seeing counseling, and also I started to see CYC workers as well, and they were very supportive of what I did, and they would help me out a lot during these times. During this time, I also started to hallucinate as well. I started to see shadows walking by me. I started to see white figures staring at me outside of my bedroom window. I also had a hallucination of my whole entire bedroom ceiling being covered with spiders, which was already a pretty scary, which was probably the most scariest hallucination I ever experienced in my life, as I also had arachnophobia, which is a fear of spiders. So that was the most scariest hallucination I had. Most of these hallucinations happened at home, and sometimes these hallucinations even happened when I was at school. I would see shadows walking by my drama and my French classroom, and I would also sometimes see white figures as well during the times I was in school. And And this made me feel isolated and pretty scared to talk to anybody about what happened. And I did know the reason why I was going through this. This was because of the trypanophobia getting worse and worse, and this and having this fear made it hard for me to talk to anybody what was going on. And the trypanophobia only got worse as the news reports were not already making it bad enough. People started talking about it, which made it even worse. Both people, and just to let you know, I was the oldest in the whole entire. I was one of the oldest students the whole entire time. And just to let you know, I was one of the oldest students in that school at the time. So I had people who were around the same age as me. I had people who were younger than me talking about it, and I had people inside of school and outside of school asking me questions if I was going to get the COVID-19 vaccine. I always replied with the answer I don't know, as I felt like answering people with the answer yes and answering people with the answer no would be bad answers, as I felt like both answers would have consequences to them, and I would. And what I mean by consequences is basically people asking me additional questions or judging me, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And also people talking about developing it, and people talking about other people getting it. It was already bad enough, and the fear really started to kick in. And what I mean by outside of school was a youth group that I started attending since March 1st. And so during the youth group one time while I was there, my dad decided that me, him, and the boss lady of the youth program should have a talk about this. I asked the boss if I could have a meeting with her, as I told her that my dad desperately needed to talk to her. So she brought me into her office. She wanted to know exactly what was going on. So I didn't know how to explain it to her. I told her that my dad had the full details, so I called him, and she talked to my dad about the whole, and she talked to my dad. My dad told her the whole situation, both about my previous experiences with needles and how the COVID-19 vaccine was making everything worse for me having trypanophobia. And she understood the situation. She talked to everybody else who worked at the youth group at the time, and people who would soon join the youth group as well. And after that meeting happened, and days after I started attending the youth group that I was in, the people who worked there stopped talking about it whenever I was around. But for the youth members who were there, they continued to talk about it, which made me have emotions of anxiety, emotions of sadness, and also more negative emotions that were even more negative that I had back when I was 14 years old. And these emotions would pop up every single time the COVID-19 vaccine was mentioned, and these emotions would get worse every single time people would say that I can get the COVID-19 vaccine, and people asking me if I will get the COVID-19 vaccine. And the reason, and why I bring the whole you can get the whole COVID-19 vaccine thing up, is because people were talking about years that they were born in. Mostly everybody was born, most of the students that I was around were born in the year 2003. And I thought that they were just talking about it out of random. And when I said that I was born in 2002, which is true because I was born in 2002, they said that I could get the COVID-19 vaccine. When I heard that, but they didn't say COVID-19 vaccine. All they said was, you can get it. The only thing that ran through my head was, did I just drag myself into a conversation that I did not want to be part of? Or what on earth are they talking about? And when the teacher walked into that classroom, she explained the whole situation. And I realized that I've dragged myself into a conversation that I did not want to be part of. And those emotions that I had, the negative ones, really started to impact me as a person, and it really started to affect my mental health and physical health as some of these negative thoughts that I had back when I was 14 started to return, which I'll get to in a little bit. So then June hit, and this was already a tough month for me. People were talking about them getting their COVID-19 vaccines. This brought up more anxiety in me, as every single time the word COVID-19 vaccine, COVID-19 shot was brought up, it only brought more anxiety and sadness and me feeling like absolute garbage the whole entire time, every single time it was mentioned. And during that time as well, that's when graduation happened, and that's when I found out that the person who I had a crush on had a boyfriend, and that made me feel even more miserable than I was before. And a few months after that happened, it was my grandma's birthday, and it was the third one without her, and it was already tough. And before her birthday happened, there was every single time I saw the person who I had a crush on, after I found out that she had a boyfriend, every single time I saw her, I felt extremely sad. I felt like I just felt like I couldn't be in the room with her. I felt like I couldn't be in the same room with her. I felt like I was going to cry the whole entire time I was there. Every single time she was in that room, we had a chalkboard in the drama classroom, since that was the only class that she was in with me. We had a chalkboard in the drama class, and I would draw stuff on there that could potentially signal signs for help and cries for help as well. But unfortunately, these signs that were being displayed on the chalkboard were not being heard. They were being ignored, and I just felt like I just couldn't be in that classroom anymore. So. And it was too late to be switched out of that classroom, as there were only 2 weeks left of school, and you could only be switched out of a class 2 weeks during the first 2 weeks of a new term, and after those 2 weeks were over, that's when you couldn't really be switched out of that classroom, and those 2 weeks that I could have been switched out of that classroom were the days before I found out that she even had a boyfriend. And this only made the trypanophobia that I had a lot more worse. And the reason why I had such a huge crush on this girl was because I remember one time I was in the social justice classroom with her. She said that she feared nothing. And when I heard that, I thought that she would be the perfect match for me. As I was scared of almost everything, and I had really bad anxiety as well. And then when I was in social justice, or not in social justice, but when I was in drama, that's when when I was in social justice, that's when I was in drama, every single time I was in drama class and she was in the same class as me, I felt like I was going to cry. I was asked to be out of the room every single time. And through the whole entire time I was in that drama class, I was scared that she was going to show up. And even on the days that she didn't show up, I still felt scared for tomorrow, as I was afraid that she was going to show up tomorrow. And even during times that she wasn't even there, and even on days that she didn't even show up, I still asked to be out of the classroom because I was so afraid that she was going to be showing up later on in the day. I was afraid that she was going to show up on the next day. And when my grandma's birthday hit, that made me even more sadder, as it was already tough to go through. And it really hurt me a lot. I had support from both teachers and students on those days, and it was the most terrible thing that I've ever experienced in my whole entire life. It was the worst day. It was one of the worst days that I had in my whole entire life. I just didn't know what to do. For the whole entire day, for the whole entire time I was in French class and drama class on that day, I didn't even want to be in those classes. I wanted to spend the whole entire day on the track, going through all the sadness that I was going through, and everything that was going on that day. It was so miserable to go through all of that, especially what happened 2 weeks ago especially what happened 2 weeks ago before that day, which was graduation, which was the day that I found out that she had a boyfriend. And it only got worse. So some of the stuff that happened on that day, I had teachers comforting me. I had students. I had a student who was I had a grade 11 student come up to me, asking me what was wrong, and she went over some of the stuff. And just like my high school was went from grades 8 to 12. I had a grade 11 student come up to me and ask me what was wrong when she saw me in distress. I told her that it was my grandma's birthday that day, and she passed away in 2018. And she went through a couple things, and she told me what her and her family does whenever it's a family member, and whenever it was one of her family members' birthday, and what they did when they were no longer with them. And when I was out on the track during the drama class, I almost cried and had a meltdown. It happened right near one of the entrances to the track, as our high school had a track. And when I was about to cry, I had a grade 8 student ask me if I was okay. I told her that it was my grandma's birthday that day, and she passed away in 2018. She understood everything that was going on, and she told me that my grandma was always watching over me. After that day happened, the trypanophobia that I had continued to get worse. And it was even worse on that day as well. And this trypanophobia that I had continued to carry on with me during the summer. And as I mentioned earlier, when I was in grade 9, I had suicidal thoughts. And the reason why I had those thoughts was because I had trypanophobia, and I felt like the only way to get rid of trypanophobia was to take my own life. And those thoughts lasted with me for the whole entire time during my summer. The only time that I did not think about, the only thing that made me feel happy and made me forget everything that I was going through at that time was a 4-day event that was happening in my town. I took a break from YouTube during that time because it was one of the most best. It was one of the best events that happened in my town, and it only happened once a year. It didn't happen in 2020 because of COVID. So we had it this year. So we had it in 2020 during the summer. Instead of having it in April, it happened during the summer in August. And that whole and what the event was a carnival. It had rides for both young kids and older kids. It also had games, and it also had food stands. And it was one of the best experiences in town. It was it's basically a time where basically almost the whole entire community gets together and actually goes on rides. And I actually went on rides with a couple of people, and I even went on rides with some of the people who went to the same support group as me. And this was basically, and during that whole entire time, I was at the carnival. It made me forget everything that I was going through, but that happiness that I had only lasted for a while. As a couple days after the carnival left my town, the depression and the trypanophobia and everything that I was currently going, and everything that I just mentioned earlier that I was going through at the time, started to return. And I decided that, and I started to come to the decision that I was going to take my own life. As some of you may not know, the CYC worker and the counselor that I was currently seeing when I was still in school would only be able to see me when I was still attending school. And since I was not seeing anybody to help me out with these issues, the mental health issues that I was currently going through continue to get worse, and I was really considering on acting on those thoughts that I was going through. And during the summer, the news announced that places like movie theaters, gyms, and restaurants, bars, casinos, and businesses like those would require COVID-19 passports. Like they would require proof of it. They required proof that you were vaccinated before you could even get in the door, and that only hurt me more as some of these were places that I actually enjoyed going to, and not being able to go to any of these places was very challenging, and this made me feel like an outcast. I felt like I couldn't do a whole bunch of stuff, and seeing all those posters on a whole bunch of business doors only hurt me more. And these businesses that were requiring it made my depression and anxiety and trypanophobia worse. And the news made it even worse as they continue to talk about COVID-19 vaccines and a whole bunch of other stuff as well regarding to the COVID-19 vaccine. And when all that happened, when they announced that the proof of vaccination was going to happen on September 13th, that's when I really started to make the decision to take my own life. I decided that on September 12th, the day before proof of the vaccination was going to be rolled out to many different businesses, that was the day that I was going to decide to take my own life. But there was something stopping me. I didn't know what stopped me. The only reason why I stopped was because I felt like there was going to be somebody out there who could help me go through what I was going through. But it did not really help too much, as it did help a little bit whenever I went to the support group that I was going to at the time, and seeing people who I actually enjoyed seeing. It helps me get through the suicidal thoughts that I was considering at the time. And now we come to and then during the summer and June, that's when those messages were sent about having trypanophobia was the worst thing to have. And those were the times when I was like crying out for help, when I needed reassurance that everything was going to be okay. Apparently those messages only ended up people spreading lies about me, and people starting to spread lies about trypanophobia. Although, and like I mentioned earlier in this video, all of the lies that were said about trypanophobia are not true. So that's basically where the fear inherited. So one thing that I'm going to, that's all I really have to say in this video. I'm sorry that all of this happened, and I'm never gonna post those messages again on the Discord server. It was wrong. It was wrong of me to do that, and I probably shouldn't have posted those. And I probably shouldn't have posted messages of having trypanophobia being the worst thing to have during the pandemic in the first place. I probably should have never posted those messages in the first place. And yeah, like I said, once again, thank you for your time for listening. I know that some of you guys may have the same opinions that you had before, but if you have the same opinions that you had before watching this video, then I understand, but just remember that I'm not going to give up because of your words. I have changed from the person who I was when I was 14 years old, and these messages will never happen, and these messages will never be posted again. And if you still have the same opinions if you still have the same opinions, then I just want to let you guys know that I'm not going to give up because of your words. I am going to continue doing what I love doing, and I'm not going to let anything stop me. I'm going to head back to making my videos pretty soon for you guys, because I know that a lot of you guys really enjoy watching my videos, and they still brighten your day. But I know that some of you guys are probably never going to forget about me having trypanophobia, and if you still have the same opinions of basically all the lies about trypanophobia that some of you have been spreading, if you still have those opinions, then I just want to let you guys know again that I'm not going to give up because of your words. I'm going to continue doing what I love doing, no matter how harsh all of your comments may be. And I know that some of you guys are probably going to understand what I'm saying. Yeah, once again, thank you guys for understanding. I'm very sorry that all of this happened, and I'm never going to post those messages again. And I'll see you soon. Bye for now.